The move begins in a white, sterile-looking building with windows covering all the walls. Couples, James and Sophie, are arguing about an undisclosed matter that Sophie is having second thoughts about. James tries to convince her that what they are doing is the future of technology and tells her that she needs to be excited. Although she still has her doubts, she agrees with him and follows him inside. The scene changes, and we are taken to 3 months earlier where James and Sophie are talking outside their apartment, discussing whether she wants to take in the beat-up coach she had gotten for free. Once they get the coach situated upstairs, they cuddle up on the sofa when James suddenly gets a phone call informing him that his father had passed away, leaving him his entire company. After the funeral, James and Sophie move into the large estate his father had left them, while James readies himself to jump into his father's shoes. On the first day of work, James kisses Sophie goodbye and heads out, leaving her in bed feeling disconcerted about their new lifestyle. Since she hadn't grown up with wealth like James, Sophie finds the house staff waiting on her uncomfortable and fires them. When James comes home that night, Sophie explains that she has let go of the helping staff so they can go out and live their dreams. When James tries to make a point about how she was affecting their livelihood, she awkwardly tells him that she has given them all 2 years' worth of pay. Although she is a bit disappointed in her, Sophie distracts him by telling him that they would be better for it, and by taking his mind off things with a passionate night. A few days later, James is in a meeting with his colleagues when he gets an urgent call from his wife. James is annoyed at Sophie's frustration that she is unable to get the lawnmower to start working, but tells her that he will try to do it when he gets home. That night, James spends several minutes attempting to get it to work, but to no avail. James has started to become irritated by Sophie's unwillingness to hire a helping staff, adamant about taking care of themselves. Frustrated, James speaks to his colleague Ronald about his recent struggles at home and how his wife wants to go back to their old life. Thinking he had a way to help him, Ronald tells James that 6 months ago, James's father was approached with an interesting presentation and they were all asked to sign a confidentiality agreement. After getting the details from Ronald, James informs his wife about what he has found and takes his wife to the large facility to meet the man Ronald had spoken about. The couple is taken into a large office where they meet Julian, the owner of the company that produces androids that have a holistic function. Showing them 5 perfectly human-looking androids, Julian explains that all of them had the same capabilities and that their only difference was their aesthetics. Addressing one of the androids, Julian tells her to greet their guests, and she does so in a human manner. Taking him aside, Sophie tells James that she thought the robot was too beautiful and that it made her feel self-conscious. Although James tries to explain to her that it is like being jealous of a beautiful painting, Sophie refuses to change her mind. After suggesting that they try one of the male models, Julian introduces them to Henry. To show them that the androids are completely submissive, Julian orders Henry to get on his knee and lick the bottom of James's shoes, which he does without question, once he has convinced them. Julian shows them Henry's docking station and tells them that Henry will be using it to recharge, or if any issues arise. Once they sign all the papers and purchase Henry, they take him back home and let him acclimate himself. The following morning, Sophie goes into the kitchen and finds Henry making James some eggs. Looking around at her, he asks Sophie if she wants anything, but she is unable to order him because he looks too much like a person. In their bedroom, Sophie and James have a small argument about Sophie's continued resistance to voicing her orders. After telling her to prioritize the workload over her feelings, James goes to work, leaving Sophie to handle Henry's to-do list. One morning, when Sophie walks out of the bathroom naked, she is startled by Henry, who is looking at her. Shocked by his unwavering gaze, she angrily tells him to go out and calls James to tell him about what happened. Thinking nothing of it, he tells her not to worry because Henry is only a robot. After having a stressful day at work, James goes home and tells Sophie that he is waking Henry up so they can play racquetball, hoping to blow off some steam. Inside the court, James gets ready for their game, and the two begin their competition. After a few rounds, the two stop the game and talk about personal matters, giving James room to vent about his problems at work and his uncertainties in life. The following morning, James wakes up feeling refreshed and tells his wife he had a great workout session as well as a conversation with Henry the previous night. Sophie grows a bit comfortable asking Henry to do tasks around the house, provided that she is kept busy as well. One morning, while Henry and Sophie are preparing the house for a dinner Sophie will be hosting for James's colleagues, Sophie gives Henry a book called Great Expectations and asks him to read it in hopes that they could discuss it sometime. After Henry manages to read a few chapters, the two have a picnic outside and talk about what Henry understood about the book. One evening, Sophie is woken up by loud banging coming from downstairs. Grabbing a metal rod she could use as a weapon, she heads down and is surprised to see Henry outside, completely naked and lying on the lawn. Rushing toward him, she rouses him from sleep and inquires about his dream, to which he confirms dreaming of being human. Moved by compassion for the android, Sophie takes his hand and guides him indoors. As they make their way back, James emerges at the door, and as Sophie recounts the events, Henry becomes disoriented, prompting James to assist him inside. The following day, the couple calls Julian over to take a look at their android. After checking Henry, Julian informs them that it is probably just a glitch and warns them not to treat the robot too much like a human, since it might evolve too quickly. After Julian leaves, James and Sophie fight as he blames her for Henry's brief malfunction while she does the same. That night, James is startled when Henry walks in on him naked, but quickly composes himself. To prove to himself that he didn't treat Henry as human, he lathers his face up in cream and asks Henry to shave him. Accepting his orders, Henry gently shaves his owner's face. While he works, James tells Henry that he doesn't feel like he is any different than his electric razor, even if he is much more advanced. As the days go by, James begins to struggle with work and continues to struggle to achieve the goals he had once set for his father's business. James goes home late one evening and finds an unopened letter Sophie had written him and attached to a book for the first day of work sitting on the fireplace. After reading it, he feels nostalgic and attempts to create a romantic ambience for his wife by lighting candles in their bedroom and waiting for her. When she arrives and sees the beautifully lit room, Sophie finds it romantic, but tells him that she isn't in the mood to be intimate. That night, Sophie has a dream about Henry giving her a sensual massage and that they were kissing while she is completely naked. Lost in the moment, she doesn't hear James call out to where and wakes up startled when he begins to gently shake her. When he sees that she is awake, James tells her that he dreamt that they had never left their loft in their city, explaining how easy life was back then. To his surprise, Sophie tells him that she has started to feel differently about their new life and that she wants them to work hard on it. While James is getting ready, Sophie opens the door and begins to sexually pleasure herself on their bed. When she is done, she hears footsteps walking past the door and hurries to catch up to who she is, sure is Henry. Gently calling out his name, she asks him if he is watching her and feels some excitement when she realizes that he has been. James continues to grow annoyed by the relationship between his wife and Henry. Seeking answers, he goes to speak to Julian and tells him his concern that the android might be falling for his wife. Smiling indulgently, Julian assures him that it is not possible since Henry is only a machine. Going further, Julian asks James if he would be jealous of any other tool she could use to pleasure herself, because Henry was no different than that. When he goes home that afternoon, James gives Henry the order to stop flirting with his wife or to show any form of attraction toward her. Henry phrases his observation, saying that he has noticed that James's love was fading, which angers his owner. After ordering him to go to his docking station, James warns Henry that he doesn't want him reading with Sophie anymore. After Sophie finds out about James's order, the couple fight, prompting Sophia to go to the city for a few days. That afternoon, Henry and James play racquetball, which results in James becoming upset at the android for not allowing him to win. Later, James is naked in the bathroom after his shower and calls out to Henry when he is unable to find his shaver. When he arrives, James is surprised to see the android completely naked. After expressing his need to please his masters, Henry kisses James and then continues to please him sexually. The following morning, James wakes up feeling confused about what he did the previous night. Getting dressed quickly, he goes downstairs and finds his breakfast packed and ready to go. When he gets to work, he is given the great news that the deal they had assumed was dead is being given a second thought, which makes James happy. Calling home, he speaks to Sophie, who had just returned from the city about going away for a few days. After telling him she would think about it and hangs up, she tells Henry that she feels that the gesture is forced. Later, Sophie asks Henry to give her a massage and let him unwind her stress-packed shoulders as she lies on the massage table. While giving her the massage, Henry begins to kiss her, and after feeling lost in it for a few seconds, she stops it. Looking at her intently, Henry mouths the word, "I love you," just as James would have said it, which upset Sophia, and she orders him to go to his docking station. When James comes home that afternoon, Sophie tells him what happened, which aggravates her husband, and he tells her that it was all her fault. Unable to control himself, James goes to Henry's room and punches the robot in the face, then disconnects the docking station so the android doesn't charge. The following morning, James leaves for work after making sure Henry hasn't moved at all. While in her room, Sophie is startled by Henry, who, with a concerned look on his face, asks her if they have deemed him absolute. When Henry finds out that James was upset because of the kiss, he confesses that James's lust had taken over him the night she had gone to the city, and the two had spent the night together. Angry with her husband's hypocrisy, Sophie calls Julian over and asks him to power Henry down, then drives to James's office to confront him about his infidelity. The two discuss their issues, talking about how it was easy to get lost in Henry's selflessness. Understanding where they were both coming from, they apologize to each other and promise to be better. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted when James's assistant informs him that he has been getting several urgent calls from Henry. When they arrive home, they find Henry standing outside, completely naked. After begging them not to get rid of him, he describes his desire to power down where he stands. Hours later, James and Sophie get a call from the police, who inform them that Henry is human and that Julian is a con man who brainwashes people into thinking they are robots. The couple brings the police over to their house so they can speak to Henry and are shocked when the officers are gunned down by Julian. As he is reloading the weapon, he tells them that he found Henry bruised and battered when he was only 3 years old. He had raised and nourished him, transforming Henry into the perfect specimen he was. Before he can shoot them, Henry intervenes and then beats Julian to death with his shotgun. No longer having purpose, Henry goes out to the field and stabs himself in the abdomen, swiftly ending his life. As he dies, Sophie and James kneel next to him and tell him they love him. 5 years later, Sophie and James are on a picnic in the park with their young son they had named Henry. The boy often asks how he was named, and the couple plan to one day tell him the story. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.